King Charles has just delivered a quiet but devastating blow to Camilla, and the fallout is already rewriting the atmosphere inside the palace. What looked on the surface like a simple decision about roles and visibility has landed as something far more personal. He has effectively blocked an ambitious plan she had been carefully building for her son, and the message was unmistakable. In this family, bloodline still draws the hardest lines. What's wild about this isn't just the decision itself. It's what it reveals about who gets to shape the future of the monarchy and who is expected to stay gracefully on the edges. If you follow these palace power shifts the way I do, make sure you are subscribed so you never miss the next layer when the story tightens. Camilla has never been someone who simply accepts limits without testing them. Over the past couple of years, she has moved with increasing confidence as queen, and part of that confidence has included quiet efforts to bring her own children closer to the institutional center. Her son, Tom Parker Bowles, has always occupied a careful position. He is successful in his own right, well-liked in certain circles, and deeply loyal to his mother. But he is not a Windsor by blood. That distinction has always mattered more than public statements of modern inclusivity ever admitted. Camilla's plan, according to those watching the internal dynamics, involved elevating his public profile in ways that would have given him a more formal association with royal events and charitable work tied to the crown. It was never about giving him a title. It was about legitimacy of presence, and that is exactly where Charles drew the line. The sabotage did not arrive with raised voices or dramatic confrontation. It arrived the way most serious palace decisions do. Through scheduling, through silence, through the quiet removal of options. Events that might have featured Tom in a more prominent supporting role were reshaped. Opportunities that would have allowed Camilla to present her son as part of the wider working orbit were redirected. The signal was clear. The core family remains the core family. Marriage and access has limits, even for a queen consort who has spent years proving her loyalty. That is where the atmosphere shifted. Camilla is not someone who collapses under disappointment. She has survived public scorn, long years of uncertainty, and the slow climb from outsider to the woman standing beside the king. But this was different. This touched the one area where her power has always felt most constrained: her children. For years, she has balanced the demands of the institution with a fierce private protectiveness toward Tom and Laura. Seeing an ambitious plan for her son quietly dismantled by the very man she has stood beside felt, to those close to the situation, like a reminder of an old hierarchy she thought had softened. Here's the thing most people miss when they talk about Camilla's position. She is queen. She carries the title. She performs the duties. She has the public face of acceptance. But the monarchy does not run on titles alone. It runs on bloodline, on the future line of succession, and on a very old instinct about who belongs at the center and who remains adjacent. Charles has spent his entire adult life inside that instinct. He understands the difference between personal affection and institutional positioning better than almost anyone alive. And when those two things collide, the institution usually wins. The plan itself was never reckless. It was measured. It involved carefully chosen public appearances, a gradual increase in visibility at certain charity events linked to Camilla's own patronages, and a soft narrative that Tom was simply supporting his mother's work. On paper, it looked harmless. In the deeper logic of the palace, it looked like a test of boundaries. Charles has been consistent on this point throughout his reign. The working royal circle is tight. The focus stays on William, Catherine, and the direct line. Everyone else, no matter how beloved, operates within clear limits. Camilla's push for her son crossed one of those limits, and the response was decisive. What makes this so revealing is the timing. Charles is not a young king. Every decision about structure and visibility carries the weight of legacy. He is shaping the monarchy that will eventually pass to William, and William's approach has always been even more streamlined. The last thing Charles appears willing to do is expand the outer edges of the family brand, at a moment when the institution is still recovering from years of fracture and public scrutiny. Protecting the center means protecting the bloodline narrative. That is not personal cruelty. It is institutional instinct. But to Camilla, it landed as something colder. She went rogue in the way people who understand power actually go rogue. Not with public statements, not with open defiance, with a shift in tone and a quiet reassertion of her own priorities. Sources close to the household have noted a change in how she manages her schedule and her private conversations. There is a renewed emphasis on the independent space she still controls, her charities, her personal network, the parts of her life that do not require Charles's institutional blessing. That is the classic Camilla response. When the palace closes one door, she does not beg for it to reopen. She strengthens the rooms she already owns. The history between them makes the moment heavier. Charles and Camilla have spent decades navigating public hostility, private longing, and the slow, painful construction of a life together under constant scrutiny. Their marriage was hard-won. The acceptance of Camilla as queen was never automatic. She earned it through discipline, through staying out of certain fights, and through proving she could put the institution first. That history is why this particular decision cuts deeper. After everything they have survived together, the reminder that her children remain outside the central circle feels like a residual barrier that no amount of loyalty has fully erased. Tom himself has always handled his position with remarkable restraint. He has never chased royal status. He has built his own career, kept a relatively low profile on the more toxic edges of royal commentary, and maintained genuine affection for the wider family. That restraint is part of why Camilla's plan felt reasonable to her. She was not trying to force an outsider into the succession. She was trying to give her son a more natural place in the public life that already surrounds her. The fact that even that measured ambition met resistance says everything about how carefully the palace still polices the difference between belonging and centrality. And that is when it stopped being a simple family moment. Because in this family, almost nothing stays small for long. A blocked plan for one son becomes a statement about the entire structure of access. It becomes a signal to everyone watching the hierarchy. The message is that marriage into the family grants proximity, influence, and in Camilla's case, a crown, but it does not rewrite the foundational map of who the institution exists to serve. The Windsors remain the Windsors. Everyone else, no matter how loved, remains adjacent. The emotional weight on Camilla is not difficult to imagine. She has spent years absorbing the knowledge that her own children will never stand in the same institutional light as William and his children. She accepted that as the price of her position. But acceptance is not the same as indifference. Watching a carefully prepared path for Tom get quietly dismantled would sting for any mother, and especially for a woman who has already sacrificed so much personal narrative to the demands of the crown. The sting is not about titles or grandeur. It is about respect. It is about whether the man she stands beside sees her full life as something the institution must accommodate or as something that must always yield. Charles' perspective is shaped by different pressures. He carries the weight of a monarchy that has faced existential questions about relevance, cost, and public consent. His answer has consistently been focus. Reduce the working circle. Emphasize duty over personality. Keep the spotlight on the direct line. In that framework, any expansion of visibility around Camilla's children risks diluting the message. It risks creating new points of public curiosity that the institution cannot fully control. From that angle, the decision looks less like a personal rejection and more like strategic discipline. But strategy and emotion rarely land the same way on the receiving end. The wider family dynamics only deepen the contrast. William and Catherine have built a carefully managed public image centered on their own children and a modern but still hierarchical sense of service. There is little room in that vision for an expanded supporting cast drawn from previous marriages. Harry's departure removed one complicated outer branch, and the palace has shown no appetite for growing new ones. Camilla's children exist in a different category, of course. They never held royal status, but the principle of controlled visibility still applies. The closer the institution draws its boundaries, the more any attempt to soften those boundaries feels like a challenge. What this episode exposes is the enduring tension between the personal and the institutional inside a modern monarchy. Camilla is both wife and queen. She is both a mother with her own family history and a symbol required to put the crown first. Those two identities have coexisted for years, but moments like this force the hierarchy back into the open. The crown still decides who gets elevated and who remains in the supporting narrative. Affection does not automatically translate into institutional space. Camilla's response has been characteristically controlled and characteristically independent. She has not created a public scene. She has simply adjusted the temperature of her engagement with the parts of palace life that feel most constrained. That is a form of going rogue that the institution understands all too well. Quiet withdrawal of full emotional investment can be more unsettling than open conflict. It creates a space of uncertainty. It reminds everyone that loyalty, even long-tested loyalty, has emotional costs when it is not fully reciprocated in the areas that matter most to the person involved. The long-term implications are subtle but real. Charles needs Camilla. Her steady presence, her ability to absorb public pressure without escalating it, and her genuine commitment to the working side of the role have been assets during a difficult transition onto the throne. Undermining her sense of partnership on a matter this personal risks creating a cooler atmosphere at exactly the moment the monarchy needs internal cohesion. At the same time, Camilla understands the limits of her leverage. She will not burn the structure down. She will simply protect the parts of her life that the structure cannot fully claim. This is the deeper pattern that keeps repeating inside the royal family. Public unity is carefully maintained. Private calculations about status, access, and future positioning continue underneath. Every time someone tries to expand the circle of who matters, the institution pushes back toward the bloodline core. Camilla's ambitious plan for her son was never going to rewrite that pattern. But the way it was shut down has made the pattern visible again in a way that feels personal. The question now is how the temperature settles. Will Camilla continue to operate with a slightly sharper sense of independence, or will the practical demands of the shared role pull the emotional balance back toward equilibrium? Charles has shown he is willing to make hard institutional calls even when they land close to home. Camilla has shown she will not simply absorb every limitation without adjusting her own posture in response. That tension does not explode. It settles into the daily texture of palace life, shaping conversations, schedules, and the quiet calculations everyone makes about where real influence still lies. In the end, this was never only about one plan for one son. It was about the difference between being loved and being central. Camilla has the first in abundance from Charles. The second remains carefully rationed by the institution he heads. That distinction is as old as the monarchy itself, and no amount of modern language about blended families has erased it. The real story is not that Charles blocked a set of appearances or opportunities. The real story is that the block confirmed a hierarchy Camilla has always known existed, even while she hoped the years of shared service might have softened its edges. What do you think this moment really shows about the limits of Camilla's influence inside the monarchy she now helps to lead? Does Charles's decision look like necessary discipline for the future of the crown, or does it reveal a colder calculation about whose family truly belongs at the center? The comments are open.